Hello, and welcome to CJ Creates. I'm CJ, and I create stuff. Welcome back, everybody. Luckily for you, I got sick this week, which gave me a lot of extra time to draw. Sadly, this means I got sick, my brain felt very foggy, and I don't actually know if these drawings are any good. You'll have to let me know what you think. This week is more Pokemon stuff. I figured it wouldn't be fair to only do one starter line and then make you wait another 3 months to see the other two. Under this logic, my video after this one will also be Pokemon and will show off the water starter. That's right, today you get to see my fire starter line. If you've seen my last video, then you know this design is something I've spent literally years on. Unlike for Maple though, this line of Pokemon was drawn in order of evolution, so the first stage came first and so on. What you're about to see is something I consider to be a fairly simple design, though it does ramp up in later evolutions. This is because it came from a simple desire. I wanted it to have an original typing. When we look at our current fire starter Pokemon, we have 2 fire types, 1 fire flying type, 3 fire fighting types, 1 fire psychic type, and 1 fire dark type. A lot of fire fighting types, I know, it's a regular complaint in the community, but our fire psychic typing is incredibly unique. Delphox was the only Pokemon to have this typing until Armor Rouge came along, and Scarlet Violet aren't even released yet. That being said, I don't need a type combination that's unused, just one that's rare. Fire types are abundant enough that by now there are combinations with almost every other type. That being said, the combinations that do exist with fire often fall back to the same few. In all 87 fire type Pokemon currently released, flying is the most common with ground and fighting right behind it. Every other combo occurs in 1 or 2 evolutionary lines. This is why, for my fire starter, I decided a fire steel typing would be the most exciting. The only other Pokemon to have this typing is Heatran, and it's a legendary. This rarity makes the prospect of a fire steel type Pokemon very appealing. As fun as this was to drum up, the concept took a minute. You see, I liked the idea of a flaming knight's helmet. As I was drawing it up, it was so easy to replace the feather we would normally see coming out of the back of the helmet with a flame. I also really liked the darkened helmet with just glowing eyes. It was such a fun silhouette. One thing led to another, and I added little bug legs. But here's where I ran into an issue. I know what you're thinking. CJ, there's already a bug in a knight's helmet that is a Pokemon. Well, yes and no. Do you count snails as bugs? That's really what it comes down to. Shelmet is a bug type who lives in a helmet. But it's a snail, I looked it up. It's the snail Pokemon, and it's not even a steel type. I also think there are enough differences in Shelmet's design and my Pokemon's design, and typing-wise they're very different. For that reason, I feel like I can rationalize both Pokemon existing. They don't look similar, and even if they have a similar theme, they evolve very differently. In making this Pokemon, there were a couple things that I really wanted to read through clearly in its design. The first of which was the helmet. I actually looked at a lot of different knight's helmets over the years. Medieval times is kind of a long period of time. There were a lot of different designs, some were intriguing, some were fun, but at the end of the day, I decided the best one would be a basic knight's helmet. It's something we can all look at, recognize, and easily remember. It comes across very clearly as medieval. You know, there's no second guessing what is that the Pokemon's inside of. Once I had the helmet picked out, I replaced the plumage of feathers with a plume of fire instead. I really liked this decision because it turned the Pokemon from a helmet into something that more closely resembled a bomb. It still kept the mouth guard and everything that made it a helmet, but this bomb imagery also helped tie it into being a fire-type Pokemon. It also gave me a few new ideas about what the Pokemon could be. This Pokemon's helmet gained new purpose for me once I had this thought. What if instead of just a helmet, it was also a hot furnace that contained all the Pokemon's power within it? It could burn at really hot temperatures and explosively let them out, kind of like a bomb, when it needed to attack. Meet Helmlet, the helmet Pokemon. Its name has a couple of different areas that it pulls from, but the first one is Helm, or a fancy word for the head of something. This little guy looks like he's just a big head, and so Helm works perfectly. The other area that it pulls from is Let, which is kind of a label we put on baby animals. The most common example would be Piglet. It's a baby pig. Now that I've thought of it though, Helmlet does just kind of make its name head baby or baby head, which is a little weird, but I'm going to stick with it. To me, Helmlet, I see him as a little bug who uses an old helmet as his shell. This protective shell also acts as a furnace, allowing Helmet to reach high internal temperatures that it can then release as attacks. The nice thing about Helmlet's design is that it's kind of vague. By covering its whole face, you don't know what kind of bug is inside. This leaves a lot up to the imagination. The difficult thing about Helmet's design is that I can't do that for every evolution. Imagine if it was just progressively bigger and bigger helmets. It's not a good Pokemon design, and it's not really a design at all. I've previously discussed how important it is to be specific when designing a Pokemon around an animal. Looking at things like animal skeletons to better understand bat wings is just the most recent example. For this Pokemon though, I decided to focus on a theme rather than any specific bug. I considered finding a bug to base this line off of, but I thought it would be more appropriate to base it on a theme instead. Since Helmet is already a bug in armor, I just decided to keep that train going. What if Helmet's evolutions weren't so much bigger and bigger bugs, but better and better warriors instead? In militaries across the world, shield bearers aren't particularly common, but they have existed historically. Specifically, Macedonia did this very successfully, where they would put shield bearers up front in order to help protect the men with weapons that held the same rank. They were kind of like a front line for the front line. I thought it would be interesting for the second stage of this Pokemon to hold the role of shield bearer in the military of Helmet evolutions. It would seek to be a protector more than anything, hence the big shields on its forelimbs. Just because it has giant shields for hands though, doesn't mean that I want it to be defenseless either. I figured it wouldn't be very mobile. It does have giant, heavy steel weights on the front of its arms, so it couldn't attack like you would normally expect a warrior to. Instead, it takes the shape of a turret. I decided to take advantage of its vague bugness and pull from the fact that many bugs have a weaponized tail. This second stage Pokemon uses its tail to shoot fire bolts across the field, staying in one place but doing as much damage as it can. As soon as an opponent gets close and tries to use an attack physically, this Pokemon defaults to its shields to defend itself and the other Pokemon that are around it. I liked Helmet's furnace concept and decided to take that a step further in this Pokemon. You'll notice on its chest that it has a couple rectangles that resemble Helmet's mouthguard. This is because they also resemble the doors on a furnace, and I thought it was a great representation of the kind of burning fire that this Pokemon would have inside of it. The high temperatures that this Pokemon generates inside itself get released through its tail, stronger and hotter than before. You'll notice in the final design I did change the shapes around here a little bit. Meet Artillipede, the artillery bug Pokemon. A very stationary Pokemon because of its weight, it attacks using long-range firebolts. When forced into close combat situations, it uses massive shields to defend itself and others. Its incredibly hot fire makes it difficult to approach and an incredibly strong Pokemon in battle. I think this Pokemon works well as a second stage because it acts as a middle point for its evolutionary line. Sometimes second stage Pokemon seem to go off the trail and be more of an outlier instead. I did end up making some changes to the tail in the final design. I think these changes were good overall because they helped make the design a lot more readable. Its tail now looks like something that shoots fire because it resembles a flamethrower or a gun of some kind. Previously, its tail was supposed to be quite flat and just have a hole in the end of it, which helped uphold its shield bearer idea but didn't really make it something that was part of the artillery. Now I think its design reads a lot better overall. Let me know what you think though. On to my final design. Third stage Pokemon are a big deal. Actually, any final stage Pokemon is a big deal since it's the one people get stuck with. Sure, you could choose not to evolve it past its first or second stage, but then its stats can suffer and maybe you don't get to upgrade to as good of an ability. Because of this, it's important to me that my final stage designs are, in a word, amazing. I want these designs to be the kind of things people look at and say, I wish that were real. If ever I make enough designs to drum up a fake game, I want people to be especially torn when choosing between the starter Pokemon. That's why this design got a lot of attention. I mentioned before that the video I record and the final official art of the Pokemon get made separately. This design has had so many iterations in the last 2 years that I was torn on what pieces to include and what to move on from. The official art that you'll get to see at the end of me drawing is actually about the 4th attempt of making this piece. It's excessive, I know, but I wanted it to reflect that ideal of an amazing starter Pokemon. The concept for this final stage of the evolution was for Artilipede to graduate from being a shield bearer to a true warrior. I wanted it to keep Artilipede's heavy armor, but still be focused on attacking instead of defending. When you look at the most efficient hunters in the bug world, you get a pretty short list. I'd narrow it down to spiders, scorpions, centipedes, and praying mantises. They're by far the best at finding and dispatching their prey. This design pulls from everything except for spiders. Spiders are efficient hunters, don't get me wrong, but they're more of a trapper whose venom takes 2 hours to fully liquefy its prey. That's not really the battle-heavy Pokemon that I wanted to make. Instead, I wanted to have some kind of sense of battle lust, seeking out fights with stronger and stronger opponents. The only problem in making my battle-ready bug was that scorpions, centipedes, and praying mantises aren't all that similar. They hunt differently, they have different body plans, and their phylogenetic trees are pretty spread out. That's just a fancy way of saying, in terms of DNA, they aren't closely related. Because of this, I thought it best to just take a couple pieces from each bug and try and do my best to make a chimera out of them. I took the maxillipeds and the armor of a centipede first. For those of you who don't know, maxillipeds were the front legs of a centipede. I say were because they aren't anymore. What they are now, after years and years of evolution, are toxin-injecting spikes that centipedes use to disable their prey. Pretty interesting stuff. Something I did want to be cautious of though was having too many legs in this design. A Pokemon with too many legs is distracting and hard to understand, so instead of giving it maxillipeds up where they would normally be on a centipede, I moved them to where the antennae are on any other bug. This turned them into kind of horns that inject a toxin. This Pokemon isn't a poison type though, so I thought instead of a toxin, maybe they inject some kind of lighter fluid, or instead of injecting they can squirt it or coat themselves in it. This lighter fluid, when exposed to the hot temperatures that kind of seep out of this Pokemon's body, would instantly ignite, giving it the ability to light these horns, or maxillipeds, on fire. That to me was an interesting concept, and I really liked it quite a bit. Once this lighter fluid idea came to fruition, I started applying it everywhere else. I took the body plan and arms of a praying mantis. Instead of giving it its normal praying mantis spikes though, on its arms like it would have for grabbing prey, I instead thought it would have little spots where it could use this lighter fluid to eject flames out of its arms, making them good for grabbing but also for burning. These spears could also be lit on fire and used as weapons, making them very efficient but useful as tools and weapons. I wanted this Pokemon to be armed to the teeth, or at least the tail, which is why it has a scorpion stinger on the end there. Meet Charvelry, the gallant bug Pokemon. Charvelry love to battle, seeking out and engaging strong foes. They can be covered in full steel armor, but battle too often for this armor to last long. Their weapons of choice are their horns, arms, and tails, which they coat with flammable liquid while fighting. The internal temperature of their bodies allows this liquid to combust instantly once released, making them deadly warriors. This being said, they often seek to protect those Pokemon who are weaker than them, reveling only in great battles in defense of the weak. This behavior garners Charvelry large gatherings of smaller and weaker Pokemon that follow it around. As it searches for larger and stronger opponents, these Pokemon cheer it on, watching it engage in fierce and tremendous battles. I may need to rename this Pokemon. It's kind of a mouthful once you try and say it in any real sentence. Charvelry, Charvelry, Charvelry. It's just kind of hard, but it's so hard to move away from at the same time. It has that char, chivalry, charge. It has all of those words that I want it to, but maybe it's just too hard to say. I don't know. You guys try it out a few times. Let me know what you think. After spending the last few days deciding on a characterization for Charvelry, I've come to the conclusion that all three of these starters should be guardians or protectors of something. Vermaple protects the forest, Charvelry protects the weak, and you'll have to wait another week or so to find out what the water starter protects. I like this idea because it gives these Pokemon a shared personality. They all protect something, but that doesn't necessarily mean they have to be the same either. Charvelry protects the weak, but Vermaple doesn't like the grandeur that comes with Charvelry's actions. Recently, I've been trying a new format where I draw the designs head-on, using Clip Studio's Symmetry Ruler to make sure the shapes look exactly how I want. This is the part of the recording that you guys get to watch, but once I'm done recording, I go back and draw what is closer to official Pokemon art. I like doing it this way because it helps me keep videos shorter and lets me put as much time as I want into making the final product. I can emphasize things like the posing of the Pokemon, its colors, and its characterization all at once. This is nice for me, but now that I've done it a couple of times, I do wonder if it affects the experience for you guys. Is it shocking when I make design changes to the final product? Let me know what you think. Would you rather get a recording of both designs, or do you only want one? If so, which would you rather get to see? Also, you should let me know what you think of these designs. Did they live up to your expectations? How do you think they compare to other fire starters? Either way, that's all I've got for today, but I hope you like what I've made, and I can't wait to see you create something of your own. Have a good one.